Just because we have a strong conviction about a position or an opinion doesn't necessarily mean we're right. I'll say that again. Just because we have a strong conviction on a position or an opinion doesn't always mean that we are right. And I'm sure that maybe just inside of you, you're probably laughing that this is coming from me, because when I was in initial formation, all those I was in formation, we are doing my formators, some of the, the things I got from my peer evaluation was that he is always right. He always wants to be right. And I'm sure you're probably wondering, did he suddenly have a conversion? Well, hopefully it's a conversion in progress. And that's the thing with conversion. It doesn't just happen immediately. St. Paul's conversion did not just happen immediately. And as I started by saying, just because we have a strong conviction about an opinion does not mean that we're necessarily right. It's the same thing with St. Paul. We often look at St. Paul as the persecutor of Christians, which indeed is the person he was. But if we look at more of that story, we will realize that St. Paul was doing what he did at the time when he was called Saul because he believed that he was fighting for his faith as a fervent Jewish man. He saw Christianity as a threat to Judaism, and that is why he was doing what he did. But again, just because he had that strong conviction does not necessarily mean that he was right. And if we look across history, we will see several figures who did some treacherous things, thinking that they were right. Hitler, for example. So we can be certain about something, but that might just be a personal opinion, which is not necessarily objective. So was the case with St. Paul. But obviously, when he had his conversion, it became a constant thing in his life. It didn't just happen on his trip to Damascus, but every single day of his life was a call to conversion. And no doubt in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 2, verse 20, he says that I have been crucified with Christ. And the life that he lives is no longer his, but it is Christ who lives in him. So every single day of St. Paul's life became a constant conversion in which he saw himself being crucified with Christ on that cross, which is the example that he invites each and every one of us to do, to see our daily lives as Christians as a constant conversion. Most recently, in our society here in the United States, we have seen the whole political mess. We have seen how even among Christians there's a lot of division, a lot of fights, a lot of hatred. And we begin to ask ourselves, what is the problem? What is going on? How can one person identify himself or herself as a Christian, but they are able to behave in such a manner or say such a thing? We all are guilty of these things in one way or the other. No one is perfect. And so, my friends, conversion does not just happen at an instance. It's a work in progress. No one can point a finger at the other person and say, you are guilty of this and I am safe. Because we all have fallen. We all have fallen and we are invited to a continuous conversion. But now, as Capuchins and religious, we have been called in a special way. Every Christian has been called by virtue of their baptism and sent out on the mission, as we heard in the Gospel from Mark, to go out to the world and spread the good news to everyone, no one excluded, everyone. But as Capuchins, we have been given that extra responsibility to go out to the people. And now, remember, we're not just going out to, the conversion is not just for ourselves, but it's for everyone. Again, the example of St. Paul is right there before us. When St. Paul had his conversion, he did not keep it with himself. He went to predominantly Gentile nations and preached the word there to Gentile nations. And he said, I was zealous for God just like you. Except that he was not doing the right thing at that moment when he was persecuting the Christians. And now that he has seen the light, he is trying to do the right thing and inviting others to do the same. When we go out to the world to preach, it should not just be to Gentile nations, but even to our own fellow brothers and sister Christians. Because if, as Capuchins, hopefully we have seen the light earlier than some of our other brothers and sisters who are having a lot of conflicts within our own faith as Christians, it becomes our responsibility to first be converted and let them see what is missing in their own faith. Because as Christians in Christ, there is nothing but unity, no division in Christ. No division in Christ. This is the invitation that St. Paul gives us today as we celebrate this feast of his conversion, the invitation to be converted and help others come to conversion. All of us know someone in our lives. Maybe it's a brother among us here. Maybe it's a friend outside in the world. Maybe it's a sister, a parent. Or maybe it's just going to be someone you come across today, even on social media, that they might be conflicted with so much that's happening in our world. Christ is commissioning us individually today. He's calling us personally, and he's giving each and every one of us an irreplaceable mission in his kingdom to reach out to that person and help them come to conversion, so that at the end, we can all be saved. Just as Jesus said that whoever hears the word and believes will be saved.